Streaming live around the world, this is Paper Cuts with Brad and Jay. We'll just get this out of the way here. Thanks for joining us on Brad's show.
Yeah, thanks for coming to my show. I did not say shenanigans. Okay.
Are you drinking already?
No, I've just got water. Always looking smooth, aren't you?
Yeah, I do it. I try to clean up for the show. Look, one of us has to. Come on.
Joining us this evening, Meagan Lucas and Gabino Iglesias.
We are live. Hello. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another exciting episode of Paper Cuts. It's a random Friday night, and it's the show with the most inconsistent schedule.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jay. That's Brad. That's enough about us because we have a treat in store for you this evening. You know, it's really hard when we put together these shows because we're just two dopes with microphones, basically, you know, and we try to have like this cool lineup. Well, it's the truth. I mean, I'm getting t-shirts made up. So we try to make up these lineups of like awesome big time writers. This evening, we have two big time writers for you. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I mean, we're going to have like a series of flubs after this because somebody made. Yeah,
our next guests are feeling really proud of themselves right now, aren't they?
I don't think they're watching right now. but somebody made a deal with the devil on this one. Okay.
Oh yeah.
First up, I think this is Meagan. I think it's your third time, so that makes you like an honorary member. It's kind of like Saturday Night Live with the green jacket, with the 5-time host thing, you know. So. Yeah, apparently we like you enough to bring you on for a third time.
Paper Cuts royalty or something like that.
If we ever get t-shirts made, we'll get you one.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, but like our budget allows that. She's the writer of Songbirds and Stray Dogs, of course, a book that both Brad and I have talked about several times. Also a writer of several short stories. And she has huge news to share with us, but we're going to wait on that. We're going to wait on the huge news, unless you were on Twitter, you spoiled it. But we'll get to that. All right, everyone. Meagan Lucas, hello.
Hello,
Meagan.
Hey, it's great to be here.
And since Meagan is part of the actual show now, she feels like she can do what she wants. She brought a guest along with her this time. This evening, thank you so much. We never thought we'd have you on the show, Gabino, but here you are. Author of Zero Saints, COYOTE songs, and the upcoming novel, The Devil Takes You Home. Everyone, welcome to the show. Gabino Iglesias. Welcome, everyone.
I'm sorry the big time author is canceled, but I'm excited to be here. So
it was like a last minute thing. Let's get Gabino on. Okay.
Yeah. I'll do it anyway. I'll probably do it. I look forward to those big news because that was my big thing I was going to start with. So I'm not going to spoil it now. But I want to talk about that.
We can talk about your news.
We could wait till the very end of the show and make people like stick around, or we could go into the big news now. It's up to you guys.
Well, I want to ask Gabino. You're doing, you're a model now. You're doing a Vanity Fair shoot. What are you going to wear for your Vanity Fair cover, photo shoot?
It is not Vanity Fair. It's another big venue that I'm not allowed to talk right now. But it feels very weird. You sit in a dark room and you write, and then like for this thing, I had to go fucking shave because. So I took a shower and I shaved, and now I'm thinking for a photo shoot, what do you do? I'm gonna get me a pretty dress, and I don't know.
There you go.
I'm gonna have to improvise because I've never done one of those. So
I don't think a shower is required.
No,
I don't wear pants half the time for the show. So
photos, right? Like, that's not
right.
Yeah.
I think somebody sent you a T-shirt that you could for sure wear.
Yes, and it is black, which, as you can see, it's all I own.
Right. It's a black T-shirt.
Yeah. I'll do that.
Oh, you awesome. You got one of those fancy record review shirts like Brad's got up there.
Yeah.
I'll get one day.
So speaking of record review, go ahead, Jay. You gonna say something?
I got to catch those sales that they have.
So Meagan, you had Gabino on. You had him on Record and Review. He wrote an article recently.
He did. Mm-hmm.
So did you How did that come about? Did you reach out to him, or did he sort of pitch the idea to you, or
Oh no, I begged him.
you begged him?
I begged-
please.
It's funny because that's not how I remember it. It was more of a really bossy text. Like, hey, make time in your schedule for this. Here are the deadlines. We don't pay. Get to it. And I was like, sure, boss. Like, whatever you say. So,
Well, I mean, at least it wasn't like blackmail instead. You know, like the pictures when
right.
might come out eventually. No, that's for something else later on. So
That's for Patreon exclusive after that.
yeah.
So I read your article earlier, and I like that, you know, a lot of writers are influenced by other writers and stuff. But you talked a lot about being influenced by your photography and pictures and the locations you've been and stuff.
It's I mean, we write, we create worlds, and sometimes those worlds are alien, and we're just going off of our imagination. But there's always something that, for me, tends to inspire. I was just home for 5 days, and I wrote a lot because I went to my old haunts, and it was what I was used to, and it was exactly what I'm writing about now. I went to the beach, and I went to Old San Juan, and took a lot of pictures, and I think visuals just help your mind get to where it needs to be. So if you're going to write about the mountains, it's kind of hard to do if you're at the beach, and vice versa. So I love images. They do things to my brain and help me get the words flowing.
So are you one that's always writing, to always writing something down just to remember later, or what's your routine, your technique?
Routine. Those are for professionals. I rely on deadlines, anxiety, and coffee, and that there's a deadline. It's now, and then I'll push everything else aside, and I'll tackle that thing, and I'll look semi-professional, because when you meet your deadlines, people don't care how you did it. It's more about
as long as you did it.
You got it in. And then I'll go back to the list, and I'm like, all right, so is there anything for tomorrow, or can I take a nap? And that's my routine. Just constantly panicking about not missing deadlines.
There are no naps in writing.
No. The coffee prevents you from doing those.
Right.
So you were talking about in that article that you're a bit of a slow writer, and you were talking about, you know, trying to meet the deadlines and stuff. So do you feel when you were maybe rushing or something to get a deadline that, I don't know, is it harder to write that way than, because you said you don't necessarily write every day, or if you don't get one word, then, you know, you might only do a sentence a day or stuff like that. So you feel more pressure when you're under the deadlines trying to get it done?
Hell yeah. It's a lot of pressure. Yeah. But I've come to accept, when you're running a marathon, there's a point where physically you see them shut down and their legs won't go anymore, and that happens to my brain. Like I'll have a really good day sometimes, and I'll crank out a story, or a chapter, or whatever it is. And some other days I sit there, and maybe I get 500 words, and then my body just goes, we're done. Go read, go work on something else, because that's as much as you were going to get today. And I try not to force it, because if you're feeling the muse, and half of the time what you write is garbage and you're going to fix it tomorrow, when you try to push it, then it's 100% garbage, and none of it is going to end up being useful. So
right. I hear that a lot, actually. I have a good friend in the UK that always says, because I'm kind of hard on myself with it. He's always, don't push it. When it comes, and it's automatic. So yeah, I hear that a lot, actually, around the industry.
I'm glad I'm not alone.
What about you, Meagan? Do you feel like you have to get a certain word count done a day, or do you stress about it, or?
No, I used to sort of like try to commit to a time, like from 4 till 6:30 in the morning kind of thing. But now, COVID just ruined everything. I think, well, my kids are all of a sudden home, and I was, teaching them and trying to write and whatever. I do think that deadlines help, if only because they just keep your ass in the chair, right? In a way that when you don't have a deadline, you don't quite have that same push. But I think that we all try to have a habit, but I think that you do writing when you're like in the shower and on the treadmill and you know, driving your car and stuff too. It's just not like writing it down, it's writing it in your head.
Right.
Do you keep anything with you? Like, go ahead.
No,
I use notes on my phone.
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, you know, I would need some kind of audio, like, you know, to say it out loud to record it, because I mean, first of all, I'm old and I can't text, so I can't put notes on my phone, you know, so I'd have to have carry around like an old school tape recorder,
or you could dictate into your phone, you know.
Jay doesn't know what that means. That's a big word for Jay, Megan. But you're talking about if you're in the shower on the treadmill, do you think of like, oh, that's a really great line, and then you forget it by the time you go to write it down?
It's less about lines and more about like plot things for me. You know, like the pretty lines I find easier than the plot hole problems. So yeah, the treadmill is a great place, or the middle of the night when you can't sleep. That's like a great time to think about like, well, what would happen next, and how do I torture this character a little bit more? Which I know Gabino does that too. You know, the character torturing.
Just the torture club.
Yeah.
It's all romance in the end.
Everything's a romance.
It's all about love.
Yeah.
I did want to say this about dictating into your phone. In May, I was writing 2 scenes in the next book, the one that I have to turn in soon, and they just wouldn't leave my head alone. And I tried that because I found myself waiting in my car in a whole bunch of places. It's not ideal. I would open up Gmail and I would dictate into an email to make sure that I had saved it. If you have an accent, you might spend a lot of time wondering what the hell you were saying, because it makes no sense. It's sort of like autocorrect for the brain, and then you have to go and try to patch lines together that make no sense. So it's not ideal for me. I think the recording would have been a little better. Would have been able to understand myself better. So yeah.
I wonder if you could change the voice on the playback, like Morgan Freeman or somebody, and make it so much more dramatic. Or, you know what I mean? That'd be pretty. Okay.
I get looks anyway when I'm waiting outside in the car. So you're standing there with your phone and you're like,
just getting all into it,
acting it out. So you know the passion. You know, you're setting up the scene.
You're punching the steering wheel and you're yelling stuff in the car alone. It's not ideal.
And then the robot voice reads it all monotone back to you. No passion to it.
I will kill you.
Where's the passion in that? I forgot where the exclamation point is.
Correct.
Well,
so
you know what?
Book comes out.
Let's get to Megan's super duper awesome.
No. Let's talk about Gabino's new book.
No,
That's
that one.
2 weeks.
People already know about that one. Let's talk about
yes. See, ladies first. We gotta know about this awesome super duper news there. Come on, tell us later.
Okay. So I have a short story collection. It's called Here in the Dark. It got picked up by Shotgun Honey this week. Very exciting. Yay. And I only sent it to Shotgun Honey, and thankfully they wanted it. So it's like the perfect partnership. I'm really, really excited.
Awesome.
I was trying to Google the name of your collection today. So I typed in Megan Lucas Shotgun Honey, and it took me to a link to Twitter where you were asking them if they were accepting short story submissions at the time for March or something like that. So I thought that was funny. You asking them back then. You're like, it's almost ready.
It's almost ready. Yes. And Ron was super sweet and sent me a message about when it was ready to send it his way. And so it was like fate, right? That it's a crime collection, and they do crime really well.
Crime,
yeah. And they also do a lot of Appalachian stuff. So I know they'll know how to treat it right. And so I'm excited.
It's nice if that's who you wanted it to go with, and that's who it actually ended up with. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think I would have had to make some changes if I was going to send it to someone else. So so that's pretty exciting. So I guess this time or a little bit later next year, August 23.
Okay.
So we get the early copy next week, right? Since it's done already. Just send it on over.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
We have to
no.
prove. You have to prove it first for you. We
Oh,
have to make
you
sure
got-
everything's. Yeah.
Well,
How
you've
many,
read you've read a lot of the stories. There's
I
15. There's
But
3.
you told me
that
earlier
horrible
this
one
week.
is in
I don't.
there.
You told me earlier this week I don't die in any of them, so I'm a little disappointed that I
You
don't die
don't.
this time. So
You don't die in any of them. There's 15 stories. A few of them are out of print. There's 3 brand new ones, and one of the brand new ones, if you've read Songbirds, it's Cora's story, and it answers that question that I get more than any other question is what's in the record case, and it answers that. So if you've ever wondered, you're gonna have to just wait and see.
For people who haven't read Songbirds, who is Cora within that story?
Okay, Cora. In Songbirds, there's 2 main characters, Chuck and Jolene, and Cora is Chuck's sister, who he is trying to save for the majority of that story. So she's a really fun character. She's sexy and bad. So she's good.
That's always fun. The bad
Yeah.
chicks.
Yeah, she's great.
Did you think you would ever go back to that world and revisit any of those characters?
Yeah, I'm actually the novel that I'm writing right now is Ruby's story, and Ruby's another character from that novel. Only we meet her when she's like 60 in Songbirds, and in the novel I'm writing right now is historic fiction, and so she's 20, and so it's kind of a
so like the origin story.
yeah. She tells Jolene in Songbirds that she's had a rough life too, and
Right.
you get to see that.
Well, I know the last time we spoke about Songbirds, we threw around the ideal of where are they now? A novel like 20 years later.
Right.
Why hasn't that happened yet, Reg?
Well,
Come on.
I'm not ready. I'm not ready for that one. Like,
I mean,
because
this was like over a year ago when we came up with this concept. So
the characters.
You're slacking, Megan.
The characters.
I mean, you're out here landing deals with your dream publisher, but yet we're waiting for the 20 years later.
Well, you have to. I think work up to being mean to characters sometimes, and the ones that are around at the end of Songbirds, I think need some time before I can
to recover.
before I can
How
throw
much
them
more
through the ringer
time?
again.
They're going to be
so-
drawing Social Security and Medicare soon. Come on.
So I'll work on that, Jay. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay.
Just for you, Jay.
Just for you. My
And you-
agent has another novel that's not related to Songbirds. So not everything that I'm writing is Songbirds related, but
Was that the ones like animals or something in the title?
Soft Animals, and it's
Okay.
it's a modern story. It takes place in upstate South Carolina.
When's that one coming out? Don't know
Good
yet.
question. No,
Good question.
apparently, publishing is going super slow these days.
Mhm.
So that's all I hear. And so
Can
either
we blame COVID for that too?
I don't maybe. I've also heard like
Probably.
the Ukraine situation and the
Right.
labor situation is an issue, and the paper situation is.
I know the paper one because I had an arc and the author mentioned me. She's like, "Yeah, the book's been pushed back a month because there's no paper to print on."
Really?
Which was,
That
and it's a
sucks.
bigger publisher too. So I was like, "Wow, that's kind of crappy." I mean, you probably wrote the book 2
Yeah.
years ago and it's been sitting there forever. Now you got to wait a whole another month.
Yeah. So she has it out to the big guys, and I guess they're moving slower than usual. So
Mhm.
maybe I'll have more good news. Next time.
Next time you come on.
Yeah.
What
We
about
could
you,
do another,
Gabino? Have you
we could
had?
do another Christmas show.
Oh God.
That was a
Oh,
train
God.
wreck.
That was a mess.
That was a mess. Maybe we'll have you back for the Halloween
I'm
show.
shocked
That
you
was
actually
fun.
came back at all after the Christmas episode because it was a disaster.
Well, I guess I had to redeem myself after I didn't know a single Christmas movie.
Wow. That
I
was just,
felt like we needed to have another conversation.
So, Gabino, we had all these guests on for a Christmas episode, and they were like the least Christmassy people ever. None of them celebrated Christmas. They hadn't seen any Christmas movies, so it was just a train wreck the entire time.
I must have been fun, Megan.
Oh God, it was so embarrassing.
We were like, "What's your favorite Christmas movie growing up?" She's like, "I didn't watch Christmas movies growing
I
up.
know.
My parents wouldn't let me." I was like, "Oh, well, this is going good."
I 2 or 3 Christmases ago, I was having ice cream with some friends before they left town, and they started talking about music, not movies. and they went around and they all had this eggnog sweater, Hallmark movie songs from their youth. And I was like, Christmas card from a hooker in Minneapolis. That's like, and they immediately went like, nope, we're going to keep going. You know, Christmas is not for everybody. Some of us like Halloween better.
The Halloween show was pretty good, I think. But the Christmas show we did was just like, we would do trivia and crickets.
It was just crickets.
It was just lots of crickets. Megan was like, she was just rolling her eyes, checking her phone, like, how much longer, guys? You know,
she's like, I'm Canadian, right? I grew up in Canada, so I didn't do all this stuff. So we had poutine and and all that kind of
stuff. Megan, Elf and Bat Santa, those are like good go-tos.
Okay. I've seen Love Actually. I wanted to talk about Love Actually. No one else wanted to talk about Love Actually.
I've never seen Love Actually. Is that a Christmas movie? Is that count as a Christmas movie?
It is a Christmas movie.
Yeah. But it just didn't fit though. It just didn't fit.
Like your whole trivia was about Christmas Vacation and no one had seen the movie. No one knew what you were talking about.
How. Christmas Vacation or Christmas Story. How they didn't see a Christmas Story. You shoot your eye out.
Right.
That's just okay.
Sorry.
Still
haven't seen it.
So now we're talking about Christmas in July. That's
there you go.
I want to get into some of the travels you've been doing lately, Megan. It's like a tour you've been doing around the United States. But let's hop over to Gabino real quick and talk about his pretty big
new
book
fucking
coming
book.
out. Yeah, it's just a matter of weeks now, right?
Less than 3 weeks, about 2 weeks or so.
That 20 days, 19 days, August 2nd. I know I lost count. I've been sort of counting, but it's right around that.
Well, I mean, you're trying to sound cool. I don't know when it's coming out. Just
no, because I know I tweeted about it this morning. So I think it's 18 or 19 days. It's been a long day, but it'll be here, and then I'll be begging people to read it, and then we'll see how that goes.
So when you get closer to release, you feel like you're getting more nervous or more relaxed? That you're like, it's finally out there for people to read, or?
I think it's been an absolutely nightmare-inducing state of anxiety since we signed the contract, because it was like I talked to Josh Mallerman. Oh, drop the name. Josh is a good friend of mine.
You should have a bell.
Ding, ding. He's been doing this thing at that level, right, for so long. And he had been doing that, and then Bird Box became a hit on Netflix, and he went to a level all by himself. And I called him up, and he called it the hell yeah, oh fuck moment. So you get like, hell yeah. And then it's like, because I was trying to explain to him, I feel like I landed, my dream job. Like I got into an NBA team, and now I feel like I need to perform, and I need to win a championship, and I need to go out and do the thing. And he was like, yeah, it's hell yeah, oh fuck, in the same breath. And I was like, yes, we should put that on a t-shirt. It's been like that, to have a marketing team and planning for a tour, which I was always winging it whenever I had enough money to go somewhere and read. Those things are very nice. And at the same time, you're like, they're sending me places, so I need to make these people money. And if I want to do it again, then I have to make them enough money. So they're like, we will allow you to do a little bit more, chopping up kids into little pieces in your head, because you did well. So it's that thing in the back of your head going like, well, what are you going to do to make this a success? Since we signed. So
for those who don't know, who did you sign with? Who did that land with?
Mulholland Books is putting it out.
It was something you approached them with. Did they have a call out? Did they know about your previous work, or how?
No, my agent sent it out. She's very organized. She had a spreadsheet, and she had her dream presses in the first round. We went with the dream presses in the first round, and we received 7 offers, and we went to auction. Nice. And we decided to go with Little Brown with Mulholland Books, and I'm glad we did. I love my editor at Mulholland, but yeah, now I gotta make it work. Gotta make the dream work somehow to get to do it again.
Where
No
are they
pressure.
sending you? Where are you getting to go?
Well, obviously Austin. We're launching here.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a private jet they're sending you places around
Yes,
the country?
yes. No, they got me a bike. And we're doing events in Dallas, Houston. I'm going to Oxford, Mississippi.
Oh, cool.
We're doing Arizona. We're doing San Diego,
Nice.
and a couple other places that I can't remember right now. But yeah.
Does the tour start when it comes out, or is it like a little bit later?
Same day. The tour
Same day?
starts on August 2nd at Book People here in Austin, and in conversation with May Cobb, and we'll talk about The Devil Takes You Home and her latest, My Summer Darlings, and we'll go from there.
May Cobb and I share an agent.
There you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I
She's
think you
awesome.
mentioned it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
She's
another
awesome. Her
name
books are
drop.
awesome.
Did we do
Yeah,
another
name drop. We need a
Get-
bell.
Ding, 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 ding,
Get
ding.
a buzzer.
We need the agent's name so we can be like, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, really.
Victoria Sanders is May
Shout out to
Cobb and my
Victoria.
So could you give us like just a little bit of the premise, a little synopsis of what's going on in your new book? No spoilers. I haven't read it yet.
I have like 3. Do you want like the kid friendly one?
No,
I
definitely not kid friendly.
I did an event in Washington with the ALA, the American Library Association, and I talked to hundreds of librarians, and they would get up to the table. I would sign a copy, and they would say like, "What is this about?" And I realized that I was giving them my sort of, this is a very dark book spiel, and a lot of them would just slide it back across the table with 2 fingers as if it was poisoned. They would say something about fantasy or YA or romance or mostly reading middle grade because they work at school. So I developed this other pitch that
You could slide that. This is kind of romance in there. Mario's trying to get the romance
I would
back a
tell
little
them,
bit.
I'd be like, "Oh, this is fantasy. You like Lord of the Rings?
it
You'll love
is,
this."
yes.
You know, you just see the response after they read it. See if they come back.
I'm gonna get in trouble for that one, so I'm definitely gonna do it. No, it's a father whose daughter gets leukemia, and there's racism everywhere, including the medical world, because leukemia affects brown babies more than white or Asian or black kids. So he's one of the small percentage of unlucky parents whose very young daughter or kid dies from leukemia. And in this country, what happens is that if you have a medical emergency and something horrible happens to you or a beloved family member, you're left with anger and pain and grief and all that stuff. And then they give you a medical bill on top of that. So he loses his his job because he's traveling back and forth to the cancer center in Houston, and he has to spend time with his dying daughter. And so he gets fired. So he has all these bills and no money. I think the core of crime and horror is sort of taking these characters who are just like any of us, and you put them in really bad situations, and then we write about what happens to them. So what happens to him is that he gets offered a couple of gigs doing bad things, and then that leads to a big score. Stealing $2 million from some narcos, trying to get the money back into Mexico after smuggling trucks full of liquefied meth into the U.S. And then just things go south. Horrible.
south from there.
South from there. So that's a
South.
happy beginning, and then
It's
things
just
get really bad.
Just a downward spiral from the get-go.
I think the first word in the book was leukemia. It's like, oh, this is starting off great.
That was probably the high point before the rest of it.
So this is not a Christmas story, Megan.
It's
so
not, no.
we don't
No.
need this for our show this Christmas.
Not at all.
Okay.
No Feliz Navidad in this one, right? I probably butchered how saying that, but yeah. But I was
Yeah.
telling them off air before we started that it felt sort of like a spinoff of Breaking Bad mixed with some Supernatural, the TV show Supernatural, because you have those supernatural elements mixed in it too, with the
Right. Yeah,
with
no,
the cartel and all that stuff.
horror lives in my heart. So I love telling stories, and at some point I'm going to make it weird. I'm going to put a demon or a ghost or some sort of religion, religious madness in there, or a little bit of mutilation, because why not?
Yeah.
The paper, puts up with whatever you write on it. So, yeah, like I said, it gets darker, and I should probably say it gets weirder too. So
It does. It got weirder than I was expecting, but I liked the weird stuff. I liked where it went.
awesome. Then it's a good book for you because it doesn't get weird.
Did you, without trying to give anything away, did you draw any inspiration from anything, like any folklore or anything, for the weird supernatural stuff you put in it?
Yeah, I've been obsessed with religion for I think my entire writing career. Megan was holding up Zero Saints with.
Yeah, we got Santeria, right? In Zero Saints.
Yeah, we have Santa Muerte in the cover of one, and the Virgin of Guadalupe on the cover of the other one. I was born and raised in the Caribbean, immersed in syncretism, Santeria, Christianism, Catholicism, Voodoo, Mesa Blanca, Palo Mayombe. It was all over the place. And when I grew up and I realized that religion was, take the U.S. for example, religious thought is what we use to tell you that you can't kiss another man, or that you can't have an abortion, or that you have only two genders. And we use all this religion to sort of make excuses for how horrible we are as human beings and how much we like to hurt others. And that all fed into my obsession with syncretism and religions and cults and all that stuff. So each one of my books since Zero Saints came out deals in one way or another with the ways that we use religion. Like, what do we use it for? Is it real or not real? And because I like to get weird, there's always a little bit of magical realism, because there's a lot of gods and a lot of demons, and I'm not here to tell you which ones are real and which are not. So as far as I'm concerned, they're all real, and I'm going to write about all of them at some point. And it's going to get weird. So, yeah, inspiration's all over.
Do you ever get any kind of backlash from that? People thinking that you're making it like totally anti-religion stories and just coming at you, boycotting you or anything? I mean, if you're not boycotting, you're not doing it right. No, go ahead.
Yes, this book should be boycotted. The next one, you should buy 1,000 copies and burn them all. It has the devil.
As long as you get paid, who cares?
Right.
Yes. My book has the devil on the cover. And this morning, I woke up and one of the copies that I have in my living room said, "Fuck the Supreme Court." So if you stand with the Supreme Court, buy 3 copies and burn them all, destroy them.
They
Send
turned
them to the
upside down.
Supreme Court.
They
Yeah.
turned upside down too.
I've never gotten pushback because there's always two sides. So, for example, in COYOTE songs, you see the nice side of that. How sometimes religion can be something that pushes people to do good things. Like someone would say, there's rules and regulations that are kind of weird, but sometimes people get this sort of cosmic sense of unity, and there's whether there's a man or a woman or a celestial being with is completely asexual, and we have to protect each other and love thy neighbor and all that stuff. So I present both sides. I'm not saying religion is completely horrible, but it also isn't perfect, which is why we've had so many wars and atrocities perpetrated in the name of religion. So I try to give folks both sides. And I think the lack of pushback comes from accepting that it's all true. Whatever you are, I accept it. I don't care about the name of your God. You explain it to me. I'm not going to debate with you, because if I'm going to assume that your neighbor is right and you're wrong, then I'm just becoming a part of the problem. So everybody's right.
And even with Mario in this one, he's sort of loses his faith because of what happens to his daughter, but later on he finds himself praying and stuff like that. So he's sort of conflicted in both sides of it as well.
Yeah, and people who grow up religious, like you can sort of try to abandon it, but it's so into your
ingrained in you.
Right.
Yeah.
So ingrained that when things go bad, you immediately start praying.
And you see that a lot. People say, "Oh, I don't believe in this or that," but then something bad happens. Oh, please send your thoughts and prayers and good wishes or whatever. So
Right.
they fall back on it too. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a thought, but I don't want to turn this into I don't know, we might get bashed for it. I was just thinking there are people who
just
maybe
do
I
it,
shouldn't
Jay.
go that.
Go for it.
There are people who don't follow any kind of religion or really don't, believe in it or whatever until something bad happens, and then it's like, bam, well, where were you all the other times you should have been going to church and all these other meetings and all this stuff? But when something bad happens, then that's when they, come out of the woodwork. But I don't know if I offended anybody with that just now or not, but we'll see.
I could easily say something more offensive if you want them off your back. People are always like, "Hey, why are you putting, all these deities and all these religions in your books?" And I'm like, "Hey, listen, God probably showed up in the last porno you watched, so it's everywhere. So don't criticize the literature for using what's out and about."
Right.
And there are so many religions, and even like in your book, there was like so many names for death that you listed off, and like it was like a whole big paragraph. They were talking about like the goddess of death, but all the different names she has. So even within sort of the same culture or religion, there's multiple sort of facets of it.
Yeah. And death, for some people it's religious, from some people it's not. From some people, death is a god or a goddess. So that was a fun. It's a short paragraph with a lot of names.
Yeah, it was just like 14 names or something.
Right, and then researching the history behind what places call death a certain name and why. Like, why does it have a scythe in this part of the country, and in here it's sort of presented as a white, pristine little girl, and in here it's like an older woman dressed in white. In here it's sort of like a skeleton, with a knife. Like why? It's the same death. We all die.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do people go into this small pockets of religion to find? It's very different between being the Santa Muerte that's on the cover of that book, and that the idea that it's like a small, white, very sweet young girl who comes, lead you by the hand to the everlasting life or whatever, or the worms. I don't know. I haven't died yet.
Did you do a lot of research for all the religious stuff to make sure you got it right?
Always. You gotta know what you're talking about. If you don't, then someone who does is gonna read that and
Call you out on it.
Call you out. So. Writers, do your research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next up, Megan's going to read a passage from the New Testament, and we'll, in this part of the.
Well, I mean, you've read Songbirds. It's critical of religion. That's where it started. I was raised religious, but I struggle with the hypocrisy of organized religion. So I think that that's something that, a lot of us try to poke at, right? The things that we struggle with. That's sort of one of the most interesting things to write about. But I do want to change the subject, but because I have a question for Gabino.
Well, I mean, it is your show too now. So
yeah, it's my. I forgot it's my show. Yeah. So you live somewhere different than you grew up, Gabino. Right. Yeah. You live in Texas now, and I'm similar. I grew up in Canada, and I live in North Carolina now. And you write about where you live now, although it sounds like maybe your next project is about home.
Entirely about back home.
Cool. I guess I get a lot of questions about, like, why do I write about North Carolina when I'm Canadian? And I've lived here for like 15 years.
I have like 8 jokes about that, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. So I guess,
just one.
All right. Give it to me, Jay.
What we have Tim Hortons, we have snow, you tap the tree for some cider, we have moose and Mounties, we have where you know where's
So the
fun
plural
and
of
all that
moose, is it meese or is it still just moose?
Yeah, Mises. And
Is it mooses? Have you ever seen a moose in real life though? They are absolutely terrifying.
They're a
yeah,
monster.
my local zoo. We were
Yeah,
there one
you are.
Sunday.
Your local zoo has a moose?
Oh yeah,
He said it
they have
escaped.
it escaped. We were on lockdown. I've been going to the zoo for over 40 years, right? The Columbus Zoo. It's one of the biggest zoos in the Midwest. And we were there, me and my wife, my two kids, and it just out of nowhere over the loudspeakers, lockdown, and you had to go find a building because a moose got loose. I'm not kidding. Like I was hoping for like t-shirts made up for Moose Got Loose, whatever. I survived the
This
loose
is a
moose of
t-shirt episode.
2022, but no, they had to
Out of all
sedate
of-
it and catch it. And
Out of all the things you would think you'd be on lockdown for at the zoo, moose is probably not at the top of that
yes,
list.
So anyway, I'd like
I'm sorry, Matt.
you know,
We
to
totally
talk-
got off your thing.
I'd love to like hear you talk about, you know, that process of, you know, writing about home now and writing about, you know, where you live and, you know, why you chose to sort of write about the Southwest and, you know, whether you get pushback from locals about whether you're allowed to write about, you know, the Southwest because you didn't grow up there.
It's when you're home, as you were talking about, you grew up in another place. So I grew up speaking another language. I don't remember before 2008 any point in time where being back home, racism was an issue for me. That was not.
Right.
You know, and Puerto Ricans are second-class citizens. They, you know, we don't get to vote for the president. We're just like this. It's a colony. All right. A lot of people hate that word, but I was born and raised in a colony, and you know, colonized people don't have the same amount of rights. So that was about as bad as it got, because when you're born, you get a social security number and a blue passport that is truly a privilege because you can go almost anywhere with that blue American passport. When I moved here, I changed my language. I changed to writing in English. I was grouped in with the Mexicans because in Texas, there's really no Ecuadorians, Chileans, Peruvians, Venezuelans, you know, Cubans, Puerto Ricans. It's everyone's. If you're brown, you're Mexican. Soon after, I started doing my research for my PhD at UT, and I worked with dreamers. So I basically conducted over a period of 3 years in-depth interviews with folks who were here in the U.S. pursuing citizenship through the DREAM Act. And after that, I taught ESL classes to undocumented workers for 2 years. So it was this weird interstitial space between what folks thought I was, the realities of people who didn't have that blue passport. And Zero Saints was the first time, because I wrote 2 books before Zero Saints that had nothing to do with either Texas or identity or borders. And then seeing, you know, Austin is not a border town, Dallas is not a border town, San Antonio, Houston, but you go there and the culture is so wildly rich and different than in other places because the migration doesn't stop right after the border. People keep moving up.
Right.
And it was me trying to figure out a lot of things. And then COYOTE songs came along and I was like, all right, so I have wild array of perspectives. So COYOTE songs was like a mother down there, folks here, individuals. The COYOTE was from other countries. We had an Afro-Caribbean Puerto Rican woman who was Alma. And I sort of started mixing and bringing together all of those experiences. Now you're Mexican. I got it out of my system with Zero Saints. COYOTE songs was kind of like, all right, so there's the Caribbean, there's Mexico, there's all of the other countries underneath Mexico that no one talks about. And I brought all of those together. With The Devil Takes You Home, the main character, Mario, was born in Puerto Rico, and it's learning how to make sense of what he experiences in the U.S. Then we have a white guy as a co-star, and then another guy from Mexico to sort of bring together all three perspectives. And the next one is 100% based on the island. And there is talk of the U.S. as the land of opportunity, where the streets are paved in gold, which is the one side of migration that I haven't talked about yet, which is, folks like Puerto Ricans who have a perfect passport that allows them to go to the U.S., but we don't have the money, or we don't have the education, or we don't speak the language, and we're stuck in the colony. And that's what I'm doing with the next one.
Cool. I love it. I love how you talk about immigration, because I'm an immigrant to the U.S. and I don't look like one, though, right? And so I'm privy to a lot of really ignorant opinions about immigration because I'm not the right color.
You don't look like one. People around you might say something,
right?
Not realizing. Okay.
Yeah, people say a lot of ignorant things about immigrants to me, not knowing that I'm an immigrant.
Not known, yeah.
Because I don't look like one,
or sound like one,
and just the whole process is just so incredibly difficult. I love how you really treat that process with a lot of compassion. Because I can't even imagine, as a upper middle class white person coming from another developed nation, money wasn't an issue, lawyers weren't an issue, that kind of thing for me, but it was still scary. I can't even imagine navigating that process as if English wasn't my first language.
You left home,
you're saying process. So there you go. You just gave it away. You gave away your Canadian. You can't get rid of all of it, can you?
Wow, religion and migration.
This is a happening Friday night, guys.
Yeah. Do you have any light questions, Meagan? Do you want to talk about my research on bolt cutters?
When you lived in Puerto Rico, though, when you grew up there, did you speak English at all, or did you not learn English until you came to the States?
Maybe 10 or 12 before I started. It's our government offices are not run in English. Most schools don't. Like, there is an English class, but you don't have all of your subjects. And in many cases, depending on the quality of the school, your teacher has like a little book and she goes by that. But when I became obsessed with books, I quickly ran out of stuff that I wanted to read in Spanish. So I had to get a small dictionary. And I had no idea what Lovecraft or Poe were saying half of the time. Like, those were not words that I could hear on television.
I don't understand what they say half the time.
Right. So I had to read them, and then I had the little dictionary by the side, and I would go back and forth, and a lot of TV back in the day, a lot of music. I've always been obsessed with music, and that helped.
I hear that a lot. Like, a lot of people like actually learn English from music
songs.
Yeah. Learning lyrics that way. Yeah,
exactly.
I have such respect for bilingual people, because I don't think people realize how hard it is to speak two languages like fluently and be able to understand stuff like that. Like, the racism where Mexicans or Hispanic people are like, oh, well, they're people think they're dumb or whatever because they speak Spanish, but they also speak English, and like, I don't know how to speak another language. So, they're smarter than me just for being able to speak two languages like that. Like, I don't know. I took Spanish in high school and I remember like nothing of it.
Right.
But even when I was in it, it was like, it was hard for me to comprehend speaking in another language.
I barely speak one right now. So,
yeah. So I just have such respect for people who are able to speak more than one language, fluently, and able to carry on conversations in both and stuff like that.
It's funny because it's when you change your language, which for me was officially 2008, and that's also when I decided I'm going to pursue a writing career in this other language because this is the land of opportunity. And where can you say I'm going to be a full-time writer other than in the United States these days? And I have no other languages, so it was either that or this. So I was screwed from all sides. You develop this little voice in the back of your head that's always telling you, be careful because you might forget a word. And you're always aware of there are things that just exist in my mind, like music and movies and literature, that because I consume them in English, I have absolutely no problem just engaging in conversation randomly at a coffee shop. But then there are other words that you've been using your whole life, and then you've been using them in that other language, and your mom says them to you all the time in that other language, and those are the ones that tend to like go away. Like chanclas, it took me years to remember that they're flip-flops because they would just come out. And that's why there's so much Spanglish in my books, because it just happens. Last week I was doing an interview and I couldn't remember peroxide, because as a kid, every time I got hurt, they'd pour that stuff on my legs. And I can hear my mom or my grandma saying, go get it, but they never said peroxide. So peroxide was a word that I got in 2008, which means I lived for like 25 years without using it. So you have that little voice in the back of your head saying, you're going to engage in conversations and everything's going to be fine for like 8, 10 months, 14 months. The time will come where you're in the middle of a conversation trying to sound somewhat eloquent, and one word will just fly off like a scared bird, and you're going to be there just like, fuck, should I ask? Do I stop? I'll pretend I got a phone call and maybe Google it. It's the not fun part, but the rest is fun games, and you can use it in your fiction. And I think this country needs more bilingual fiction, because if you take all of the tongues that the Native Americans spoke that are still alive today, and then you take German, Italian, French, Polish, Russian, folks from the Caribbean, Pidgin English. It's a very rich, very diverse nation in terms of the kind of stuff that you might be able to find on paper. So encouraged all of you writers, if you speak something else, create those bilingual characters and drop it in there. And don't translate it. Let people figure it out. That way they learn something.
So with your book, you do have a lot of, is it just Spanglish? Is that the way to say it? Was that how you'd say it? Did you get any pushback from the publisher saying this is too much? You know, people aren't going to know what they're saying. Let's go pull them out of the story to Google it or whatever. Or were they cool with it?
I think I was very lucky that my first 2 books with a lot of Spanglish were published by an indie press. Indie publishing is a treasure that should be protected at all costs. And I said, number one, I don't want italics on the Spanish. Don't otherize my language, because it's not other to me. It belongs to me. So it deserves to look exactly like the English on the page. And number 2, I'm going to work really hard, and I do work really hard on trying to help readers get what it is that's going on, what I'm trying to say, get the gist of it, get the vibes, and try to understand what's happening on the page. But I'm not going to include every single translation. Because I managed to do that for 2 books that were nominated to things and won things. Then when I got to The Devil Takes You Home and a bigger press, they kind of knew from the get-go, I'm not going to translate anything, and we're not using italics for the language. And I think that gave me sort of an advantage. So if I took my first book, which came out in 2015, Zero Zanes with Spanglish on it, and I took it to a larger press from the start in 2015, I'm pretty sure they would have said, something about, they wouldn't have said speak American, because they're not that awful, but they would have said something along the lines of, this is for the English speaking market, and it's for the, monolingual readers at large. So let's make it easy for them.
I'm I'm glad you mentioned it's using italics, because I don't think I've ever, until you just now said that, it just dawned on my head. I've seen italics always for, for the translation when there's another language, and you telling them you don't want that in your book. Like, I just now thought of that. Like, once you said that, a bunch of different pages popped in my head from that. That's
because you've seen it all the time.
Yeah. And not even without even thinking about it. Just thinking that's just a way that it was supposed to have been published. Like an inside to look at publishing a book. But telling them, hey, I don't want that. Going against the grain, that would make it a little different and not adjusting to the norm of what they think the norm may be. So
this is the way it's supposed to be,
right?
And this is the other outsider, stuff that you're bringing in. So we're gonna make it look weird and tilt it to the side.
And like you said, you didn't translate all the stuff, but there would be every now and then, you might say part of it in English, so they would they'd get the gist of what was going on.
Yeah, especially in the last third of the book, I thought there was some really crucial conversations, like between Mario and Juanca's mom, and I wanted to make 100% sure that people got what was happening in there. And there are ways to do that without translating, which is like, a character repeats something. Yeah. And for a lot of bilingual folks, I don't translate the words that you say to me because I understand the language. So sometimes when my inner dialogue, which is narrated by Werner Herzog, the inner dialogue goes on in English as I'm having a conversation. So that's like one way of making sure that, the dialogue itself, the conversation between these two characters happened in Spanish, but when when the main character is thinking about it, it's easy for me to translate it. Because you put it on the page and people get exactly what you were trying to do. Hopefully, I don't know.
Do you think about what you want to have as Spanglish and what you want to have as English in your book? Like, is that a conscious decision, or you just, when you're writing it, you just put this part in Spanglish and this part in English, and it's just more natural?
So I think that came mostly the first time from who the characters were, because I was hanging out with a lot of people whose roots were somewhere else, either in South America or the Caribbean, but whose entire life had been spent in the U.S. So they had, for them, English was one thing, Spanish was what maybe their grandparents spoke to them, but for their parents, which might have been, already born in the U.S. or came in as teenagers, Spanglish was the thing. Like it's one language that's completely new because it's this hybrid of the other two, and then there are words that you kind of get as you have conversations, and you realize these are fully bilingual kids who can give a presentation in English, translate an entire conversation in Spanish over the phone, and then when they're talking to each other, both languages just clash. And with Zero Saints, as I was thinking and imagining the conversations with the characters, the Spanglish popped up, and I said, all right, so what would happen if I put it on the page the way that it appears in my head, so that when people don't remember flip-flop or peroxide, they're not going to look for it. They're just going to drop chancla or agua oxigenada, and then what if I just keep writing it that way? And when I read it back, I was like, this is exactly how people sound. The people that I talk to every single day. So this is how it's going to stay.
It's more authentic that way.
Yeah. So we'll see. No pushback. Google Translate might help you.
It says it in the robot voice.
Right. Before you drop that angry 1-star review on Amazon, may I suggest going to Google Translate?
Have you gotten negative reviews because you
the 1-star and nothing left?
Oh
nothing,
my God.
No reason why.
Yeah. It's the did not finish. You need to know Spanish.
Those were the actual reviews. You need to know Spanish. Didn't finish.
Yeah, no, they're up on Amazon. You can go look at them whenever you're bored. And at the beginning, they hurt. And I talked to my editor back then, and he said, in a way, this is good because it means that more than your friends are now reading your work. On the other hand, it kind of sucks because, when you're an indie press writer, you want those Amazon reviews to not be 1 star. And now I find it hilarious because it's sort of, oh, you don't know? I'm sorry. Maybe it wasn't for you. Maybe you need to go back to reading whatever the hell you were reading before. Because if you saw my name on the cover, you cracked it open, and you saw Barrio Noir on the first page, and you turned it around, and you read the synopsis, and you read about Mexico and Puerto Rico and cartels and Santeria and all that stuff. You didn't think there was going to be some Spanish in there.
Right.
I can't believe that he spoke Spanish in this book.
Thank you for your $2. Go ahead.
You also, like those negative reviews, because some people look at the negative reviews and are like, I want to know what was so bad about it, so I'm going to read it and figure it out for myself. So
especially the horror community, like we'll go look.
I know that's what we do, isn't it? Right?
Too bloody. It's sexy and dirty and gory and disgusting. Sign me up. I'm buying this.
Negative 10 stars.
Negative review.
There.
Yes.
You're getting a negative review for those bolt cutters. Like, oh, that was too violent. Can't handle it.
Too violent. You nailed it. That's one that I'm like, too violent? I need to buy this.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
What about you, Megan? Do you worry about negative reviews at all? I mean, you probably don't even get any negative reviews.
I thought you were going to ask her if she mixes English and Canadian in her
Canadianese.
words, because like you put a U in favorite, don't you? Right.
I do, yes.
But I think also some of our UK writers, they put a U in
They put the U in favorite.
Yes.
some of those
Well,
words. So
because Canada uses British spelling.
right. Okay.
Right.
I think
Because we're they are a Commonwealth country, but I grew up speaking some French because Canada, has also French. I cannot speak it anymore. However, I think you can't worry about reviews, right? That's not something that you can worry about. You don't, when you're writing, you're not thinking about the reader. You're thinking about telling a good story.
Yeah.
But like, do reviews hurt my feelings? Well, yeah, sure, of course they do. And not the.
You never got any though.
The people do not like the ending. Well, I shouldn't say people. Some people do not like the ending of Songbirds. They wanted a happy ever after.
And it's not.
And it's not. So, but that was not my intention, and so it really only hurts when people assume that like you just didn't know what you were doing. When it's a difference of opinion, I think it's fine. But you don't read the reviews.
I think it's funny people to say that the author didn't know what they were doing, but it's your story. You know exactly what you're doing.
Right.
They're just mad because it didn't go the way they wanted it to.
I know.
Exactly.
I don't know if I could do a review and make it negative because I didn't like the outcome. Because usually when I'm reviewing something, I'm looking at relatability with characters or the structure, the flow. If it kept my interest. Because the ending's different, I'm not going to say, well, this freaking sucked. -5 stars. That's the way the story. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Okay,
right.
That's how the story. That's how the story ends. Bill,
right, but reviews are for readers, right? Not for the author.
Correct.
So, so that's just you just got to remember that.
In saying that, though, have either one of you all ever taken any maybe constructive criticism from a less than favorable review and applied that to future stuff, or do you not even worry about stuff like that?
Well, because people didn't like the ending of Songbirds. I doubled down on the next one. So
you made it twice as horrible.
Made it twice as sad. And
if Songbirds,
I'll show you.
The next one will.
Right. If you didn't cry in this one, just wait.
That's the tagline for the new book. If you didn't cry before, you will now.
I like that. I hope you put that on the cover. I thought about it at the beginning because you're torn between this is what I want to do, and then also I can't do it if I don't have a readership. So maybe I should pay attention. And then I started working with really, really great editors on short stories. And I started writing for NPR, and my editor there was absolutely amazing. And, when you write for NPR, a lot of people read it and they have opinions. And so I was writing book reviews, and they would have opinions not only of a book. Sometimes they would have opinions of a book they haven't read, or they would have opinions about your opinions on a book they haven't read. So at that point, I was just like, you know what? What is it that you don't like?
Right.
Excessive gore and violence. All right, here we go. I'm bringing the bolt cutters. What made you quit reading? Too much Spanish. Holy damn, I'm gonna put some more in there. It became this thing, like you have to convince Megan's stuck in this beautiful, awful process right now. First, you convince yourself that you have a good idea, and then you put in all the work, and then you write it, and then you send it to an agent, and you try to convince the agent. So at the end of the day, when you see a book that someone put out into the world, this individual convinced a lot of people that this was worth putting out. I'm completely incapable of writing happy endings. But I know that millions of readers crave happy endings, which is why romance is so goddamn popular. I don't write romance. So if you want the happy endings, you go to your local bookstore and you buy romance book. Don't buy mine, because I don't care about your angry review that a lot of people died and there's a lot of suffering and grief and nothing works out in the end. That's what I write. You want the happy endings. You have an entire genre designed just for you. So I stopped paying attention.
You have a TV channel for it, the Hallmark Channel. So
there it is.
right, exactly.
Go read what makes you happy, and I'll write what makes me happy.
Yeah, what's it Lansdale says? Write like everyone you know is dead. Write for yourself, and if other people like it, great. If not, you at least like it.
Exactly.
Well, we could look at that another direction too, because I think I brought this up with Lansdale when we talked to him. Do you think people, especially in the indie community, maybe hold back what they really want to put in there because they're afraid they're going to offend, or they're afraid that they're going to be too extreme or just really turn people off, and they're looking for the happy medium? Do you see that a lot yourself? And do you think too many people are holding back and not really going with what they feel they need to get out there?
I teach a workshop for writers on violence, and the reading list is like some of my favorite stuff, right? I'll give you some very brief examples. Some of them I won't talk about the book because I really shouldn't, but I'll give you titles. Carlton Melick III wrote books with titles like, Razor Wire Pubic Hair or The Baby Jesus Butt Plug. You can do it you want, right? Robert Devereaux, a superb writer, wrote a book titled Baby's First Book of Seriously Fucked Up Shit. I don't think they're holding back. If you read Edward Lee,
right,
James White, Nate Southard, they are not holding back at all. Shane McKenzie has a book titled Pus Junkies, where people get high by sucking on their pimples and drinking the pus. It's
Megan left the chat.
Yeah, Megan just left the room. She's out.
Ryan Harding, one of the living kings of hardcore horror. One of my favorite Ryan Harding books that I'm not going to get into is called Genital Grinder. So I don't think they're holding back. I think there's a lot of people who say they want to do extreme horror because it's appealing. And then they don't want, as you say, Jay, they don't want the pushback. I got mutilation in this book, and it was picked up by a big four. I'm not going to make apologies for it. I had something that I wanted to say, and I thought mixing religion with a weird cult of people who thought that chopping up this skin into little pieces and keeping those toes and those chunks of flesh got them, in touch with God. If you can't see past the bolt cutter scene, then maybe the book is not for you. I'm not going to apologize. I did what I wanted to do. And I think Edward Lee and Brian King and Lansdale writes some really weird stuff from time to time. And he's a national treasure who writes about, a black gay character in Texas. So the man is doing it all. And I think there are like two sides to that coin. There's like new people who are trying to get a readership, and they think, I'm going to try to keep everybody happy. And then there's folks like Ryan Harding and the rest of them who are just like, this is what makes me happy. Are you going to come along to this absolutely gory, disgusting, extreme, depraved, sick literature? And we go willingly. Like, for me, reading Edward Lee is like a treat.
I mean, we could even go to like Megan's, Songbirds. Like she was just saying how a lot of people didn't like the ending. She went with the story don't mean to speak for you, but you went with the story you wanted, and that's the ending you wanted. But I could probably see someone writing basically the same story, but changing the ending to get those happy endings that you were talking about, to try to get more of the masses reading it because it has that happy ending, So I'm just wondering if you see sometimes, or if you hear people, I changed the ending because I didn't think people were going to like it, or, how often that actually happens in the industry, like I would be I want my ending the way I want it to be. To me, it's a piece of art. Right. And no one's going to tell me how to do my art. And I'm guessing that's the way both of you are. But I can also tell there are people that are going to change their art to try to get the masses, So.
Well, and there are people who are forced to, like, because you get an agent and then your agent finds a publisher and then the publisher, gives you a deal but wants to change something. I think that would be difficult. But I think I see it more in beginning writers who are afraid to be honest than I do in like established writers, that I think those of us who are publishing kind of already know like that you write for yourself and you don't write for anyone else. And there's a sort of this support that happens underneath you, no matter how sexy or gruesome or whatever that you're writing, that when it feels honest, there's an acceptance to it. I think it was Chad Lutzke put out like, give me the first line of what you're working on. Yeah. And I had this line, and it's the first line in Here in the Dark that I was working on. And it's about face sitting. And I was like terrified to tweet that out, but the response was like incredible. And now it's the first sentence in the story that's my collection is named after. But like the response, especially from my female friends, was like, yes, hell yes, we need a book about this. And so I think as long as the author, as long as it feels real and honest, and like, that brutal scene or that violence is necessary to the story, then like you're going to get people's support. You don't need to edit that out.
So let me ask you this: given the recent success of naughty books in mainstream reading, you had it and you went with like Here in the Dark instead of like Face Sitting as a title. That's marketing gold. You could have made $1 million.
Well, it was not important to the plot. Let's say that.
Who cares? You have it. Just imagine the shirts, Megan. That's what I'm saying.
That's a tag for this whole episode. Imagine the shirts. We got all these different shirt ideas. We just all need to start a t-shirt.
We got like probably 100 different t-shirt ideas.
Forget writing. Let's just make some t-shirts.
Yeah.
Well, that's where the money is. It's not in writing.
There's a t-shirt right there. Forget writing. Let's make t-shirts. Bam.
But do y'all see the opposite of what we were talking about is that people maybe are trying to push too extreme and it feels sort of out of place or doesn't feel in line with the plot, and it feels like maybe they're being extreme just for the sake of being extreme. Do y'all come across that at all?
All the time.
Or feel like people do that?
Indie horror has a problem with that, and we talk about it in the workshop. If I see one more, edgelord angry young white straight male just writing stories about rape because that's the one thing that they know will get a reaction.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes me feel stabby, and it's there's nothing. It is shocking, right?
Yeah.
But there are individuals who are trying to tell you about this is my nonfiction book about surviving abuse. And to use rape as a, I don't have anything else, but this is shocking. This is like taboo, and it horrifies people. So to use it as a cheap literary device, which is something that, short of murdering someone, is the worst thing in the world that you could do to another human being. It's sickening, and I have a very hard time whenever I get like an indie book that deals with it that way, and then it leaves me a sour taste in my mouth. Like any press that would put out this garbage, what else are they going to put out? And then I think we all know the answer, which is like, well, we're going to play with this, and then if it's does slightly good, slightly well, then we might push some like white replacement theory narratives and try to push some other buttons and sound all the dog whistles. And if that's what you want to do, it's a free country, so go do that. But every time I see
there's
it,
a market for it too. So
Well, we saw that.
exactly.
We saw that white replacement theory.
Yeah.
Book. Thank the whole press.
Exactly. So there is some of that, and every time that I encounter it, I'm done with that author and I'm done with that press, and I move on because,
I think, like, and I've mentioned this before in the past too, with extreme stuff. If the extreme actions in the book, if they're needed for the story, if they're needed for the plot, if they're relative to what's actually going on, I can accept it. I can take it. I can read it. And it won't bother me. But if you're seeing a book where they're just trying to one up themselves each chapter,
right,
and just keep going and going, and just seeing how far they can actually go and see how long you're going to stick with it. It has nothing to do with it. I just get turned off by it, and
yeah,
it's weird. I mean, I think it's weird that there's a market out there for, like you said, straight dudes writing about rape nonstop, and like I don't get the turn on for that, and I think that's what I'm usually like, okay, I'm done with this to move on and do something else. So
it's I see those elements in fiction as what you just said, Jay. Like, it has to serve a purpose. And the only concept that usually helps me explain it to my students is the way that we consume music. Like, if I'm getting to the gym and I know that in order to have an outstanding workout, I need to be in a certain, mindset, and I need to be angry, I'll blast some Cannibal Corpse, right? Yeah. And that'll get me in the mood. But at 7, 8 p.m., lounging with the dog on the sofa and I get a drink, I'm not going to play Cannibal Corpse. That's not the mood, right? So when you're trying to like hit it all the time that hard and just one up, as you said, then it becomes this single annoying note. And you're like, all right, so this book has no character development, no pacing, no story, no plot, no world building. It's just like gore, 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 sexual abuse. And you're done because single notes are boring. Like, how long? It's like listening. Who was like Kenny G that broke the world record blowing
with
like
the long note,
right?
Like 18 minutes or something, like 45 minutes or whatever.
Right. It's like listening to Kenny G blow the same notes. Like you want to shoot yourself in the face.
You get desensitized to it in the book, and this, the one book, you're over it by the time the third chapter rolls around. It's just the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you see much of that in your? Go ahead, Megan.
Oh, I was going to say, I think too that it depends who the author is, right? Mm-hmm. A little bit, because I took Gabino's writing violence workshop, and it was great. And we talked a lot about sexual assault, and I write about sexual assault a lot. Mm-hmm. But I'm a survivor of that, and I think maybe I treat it differently than. But I think that, it's sort of that own voices kind of thing that you have to sort of, if you are a white dude who's writing about sexual assault all the time, or if you're a white dude who's talking about like racism all the time, right. Or, that kind of violence, like there's always like a little bit of suspectness to
Right.
it, you know, that
Mhm.
it's gratuitous. But when I'm reading, you know, a Black writer write about racism, it means so much more to me than when I, you know, read a white writer who's writing about that. And so I think that there's a little bit of that can kind of play into that,
And
whose the author is.
Right? The disrespect of being like, oh, there's a bunch of writers, male, female, transgendered, asexual, whatever, writing about their own experiences. I'm going to take that and I'm just going to put it in my book because it's fun and people are going to be shocked. You're like, wait, that's
Yeah,
this
see,
is
that's what I was
someone's-
getting at, because like Megan, you said you
Right.
write about sexual abuse, but
Mhm.
that's it's very relevant to the story that you're telling, and it's got a
Mhm.
place for it. Where if someone's writing, you know, sci-fi horror or whatever that has nothing to do with it, but they just throw in a rape scene, what's it got to do with the
Right.
story? You know,
Right.
if nothing
What is it?
comes
What's it
of
adding?
that, yeah, if nothing comes of that scene, and it was just there just because they felt like writing that. First of all, you know, you need to question their own mentality of why they're writing that and why they thought that part was
Yeah.
entertaining if it
Yeah.
brings nothing else to the story. So,
Right. Because those scenes are really fucking hard to write, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're a normal person, that's not an
Yeah.
enjoyable scene.
I don't
And
know any
so-
normal people, but still.
So if you're, you know, right, who knows a normal writer?
Right. What is
Right.
normal?
What
you
is
know?
normal? But yeah, if you're a you know a writer who enjoys or writes a lot of those scenes, then yeah, there's a thing.
How do you all cope with writing those tough scenes, whether it's, you know, violence or sexual assault or whatever? Do you all, you know, step away and go watch kittens on YouTube, or how do you all sort of cope with that kind of stuff?
We're puppy people, Brad.
Or puppy? I'm sorry, that's
Yeah,
right. We don't want cat buttholes.
Yeah, we
gotta
don't.
gotta get the dogs in here.
We drink.
There you go. Just some Maker's Mark. Just, you know,
Yeah.
or do you
I
even
don't
need to step away from it, or does it not really bother you at all?
I think I stay in a mood. So I'm going to answer that with I've failed to find something. The next novel starts with sort of a fictionalized event that actually happened. One of my friend's moms was murdered. She was shot in the face twice working a club. And that's the beginning of the story. The rest of it is kind of, you know, some stuff happened, some stuff didn't. But that thing that gives birth to the novel, that big inciting incident at the beginning was real. And I turn off the music. Like I'll listen to something really dark and my mood will be messed up. And then I save my document and I turn off the music and I walk the dog, but I can't step out of it. So I'll stay in that mood. And when I write violence, if in my case, I always try to make the violence fit the story. It's here because of these reasons, and this is what I wanted to accomplish. I think being a writer, depending on what you write, obviously, if you write happily ever after stories, great. But for folks like Megan and me and our friend David Joy, you're in the business of fucking yourself up so you can produce those things. And I can't step away from it. So I'll stay in a mood. I'll stay in a mood for a couple hours, and then eventually I'll play guitar outside and look at the sky, or I'll watch a documentary, or I'll talk to good people on Twitter, or I'll go read something really happy, and eventually, kind of like everything else in life, it sort of like ebbs away until the next day. But it's like you're hurting yourself to make sure that it hurts on the page, and then you can't turn it off. Or maybe I'm just wrong. I don't know, Megan. What about you?
No, I think you use it, right? Like you can't turn it off, and so you just follow that to the next scene where you take it out on someone else.
Right.
You know, it doesn't go away. You know, you hold it, but that's your job. You're carrying it.
Is this sort of like method acting, like where they're so in character, they just stay in character? You know, you're in that headspace of, you know, violence or whatever it is. You try to stay in that headspace while you're continuing on with that scene and stuff until you're done with it.
Yeah, I think so. When I was at Robert Morris, a couple weeks ago, Ed Karshner asked me like why I'm so much meaner in my short stories to my characters than I am in my novels. And I think it's that, that when you're writing a novel, it's 2 years of writing and a year of revising and
Stop it, Jay.
and you're with those people for so much longer. You're carrying those burdens for a long time. So a short story it's less time. Because it is like method acting. They are your friends.
You have to get to the brutality a lot quicker in a short story.
Right,
So yeah,
right.
with a novel, you could spread it out. So
Right.
it's probably the same, really. It's just the same amount. It's just spread out a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. Well, and our, to drop David's name again, he talks about like needing to know those characters enough that you know them like your mama, right? Like you're going to know what they're going to say the way that you know what your mama's going to say. And so, they're your friends. They literally talk to you in your mind. So I guess that's a little real. But so yeah, you can't, it's like your friends are hurting. These things are happening to people that you know. And so you have to carry those feelings, but that's what makes your book good.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever gotten so attached to a character sort of like that you've been not worried necessarily, but upset about killing them off or cutting their toes off or whatever you're going to do to them? Like, do you dread scenes coming up like, oh man, I really don't want to do this to this character?
I always apologize after.
Sorry, I killed you.
I know it's coming. I start a book and from page 1, I'm like, you're all gonna get it. I am sorry.
If you know going into it, then I think that's different.
And I think we all do this trick in order to get to know them that way, that we take bits and pieces from people that we love in our lives, and we built these characters. They're sort of like, Frankenstein monsters of people we love. But from the get-go, you're all gonna get hurt, really. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Maybe some people will love you just as much as I love you when I finish this thing, but it's gonna hurt.
That could be the new disclaimer up front. Do not get attached to anyone.
Right. Right.
They're all dead.
They're all gonna die. But that's life, isn't it? So it's
yeah.
There's a character that I killed off in Songbirds that I didn't know had to die when I started writing.
Shame on you too.
And when I realized that it needed to happen, I was really upset for like 2 weeks, and just knew, like, when the plot pieces fall together, you just know, and that was the solution.
I remember reading that scene. I like messaged you on Twitter. It was like, I hate you. And you just like put some smiley face emojis back.
And that's how Meagan got hooked on murder.
That was totally a gateway.
Yeah, that was a gateway.
Because I think you told us before, like sort of like a lot of like mom like book clubs were reading your book and they were just like, they were off put by how dark it was. They weren't expecting that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, they see a female writer and it's got Songbirds in the title, and
Right. Like this doesn't look like it's as dark as it actually is.
Yeah, it doesn't. And it's about, a young woman and she meets a man. And so they think that, they're going to get together.
Romance.
Right. They think it's a romance, and then it's not. And so when the horror community embraced me, it was lovely because none of y'all ever complained about how much cussing was in the book.
Nope.
or how many people got killed. And so that was really
I think that's still great how the horror community grabbed your book and just.
But now it's representing North Carolina in like the Route 1 Reads Library of Congress, whatever thing. And so that's pretty awesome that this like really dark book is representing North Carolina on like a national level.
That's awesome.
So you've been traveling a lot lately. Or you were at you did a little tour last week. You have something else coming up, right?
Well, I am the Roger Gillen visiting writer at Robert Morris University, which is in Pittsburgh. And so I was there for a week doing workshops and readings and stuff, which was really fun. And I'm not doing any traveling, but I do have an event with Ron Rash next month as a result of this Route 1 thing.
Big time now.
Man, Ron Rash. Right?
Going from this show to Ron Rash. I mean,
I was going to say,
right. My next show is with Ron Rash. So
we're taking credit getting you ready for that.
Just like, I was on Paper Cuts last week. He's like, what are you talking about?
we won't, after that show, we won't hear from her ever again.
Yeah.
Whatever went wrong, I was just like, no, I don't want to talk to you.
Hey, can you put a word in for us with them?
Yeah.
I thought he
I
was the
already
one
told her.
that canceled today.
Yeah.
I already
He's
told her
how we
last
ended
time
up.
to text David Joy and have him come on the show, but she didn't do that either. So
David Joy doesn't have internet at his house,
Yeah.
so
David Joy
just
doesn't
go
live in
knock on
New
his
York.
door. But his stuff and both of y'all's are all sort of in the same kind of boat together. Yep. Gabino's is more a bit horrorish, but it's all sort of the dark, fictional lit stuff. You're down south and she's in North Carolina. David Joy's in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Why do you think? And yours is like more crime and stuff. Why do you think the horror community sort of embraces that darker stuff? That's not necessarily just straight up horror with monsters and demons and stuff. Although Gabino, you have that stuff in there too. But yours is more like noir crime with those elements thrown in.
I think horror and crime share a really dark, twisted heart, which is, I think I talked about this at the beginning. It's regular people thrown into really bad situations. So whether that's cancer, poverty, or a gun, or an entity haunting you at your house, or grief, or a demon, or it's all horrific. Like when you think about stuff that scares you, I try to go down the list, and it's like werewolves, zombies, vampires, aliens. I love those. I've never been scared, not even when I was a kid. But then some of the other stuff, I'm like, oh shit, how am I gonna pay rent? So and so got sick, and I've lost so many friends to cancer. So like, cancer scares the shit out of me. So those things, when you put them together, like under that big umbrella of like speculative fiction, like what makes my book horror? Well, there's like underground creatures, and then there's a lot of violence in some scenes, and then there's like a cult thing going on, and then you go, oh, okay, but then what makes it crime? Oh, well, you got the narcos, and then the guns and the gangs and stuff. So it is both. And one thing that I learned at my first marketing meeting ever was, if you call it crime, some of the horror folks are not going to come to you. If you call it horror, you're putting a stamp on it. Right. So nowadays the trick is to call it a thriller, right?
There you go. Yeah.
And then you get a bigger readership. But it's magical realism. It's horror. It's this. It's a thriller. It's crime. It's noir. Call it whatever you want. That's why I ended up using Barrio Noir since 2015, so I don't have to explain to folks what I do. It's a mix, and hopefully folks enjoy it. And I stay away from the genre thing. Seems to me, with each passing day, for librarians, because they need to put it somewhere.
Right. And
the marketing folks, because they need to call it something when they send it out. The rest of us, we're just writing. We don't know what the hell we're writing. We're telling a story.
Blending all the genres together. Going for
it all in there. Yeah.
I mean, Megan, you landed with Shotgun Honey. They're pretty active in the horror community on Twitter and stuff too. So I mean, because I know I get stuff from them and read too. So that there's a little bit of a blending of genres there and a little bit of a crossover. So
sure. Well, and I think that the horror people embraced Songbirds because there's nothing scarier, like Gabino was saying, than people, right? Like
people in life.
Way more scared by people than I am by monsters.
Right.
And the real crimes are always like these systemic things, like racism and misogyny and societal injustice. I just finished watching Under the Banner of Heaven. That show.
Did you watch?
I have not seen anything scarier than that show. And it's not horror. It's not. And it's
with is that Andrew Garfield?
Yeah, and it's based on John Krakauer's book about murders that happened in the Mormon community in like the 70s, and it's just like that is the scariest thing that I have ever seen. And
that opening scene is
horror at all. It's just the attitudes of especially men towards women, and it's just like mind blowing, horrifying. and not horror. It's crime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the scariest books I've ever read was The Golden State Killer by Michelle McNamara. And that's like the only book that had me like locking my doors and windows at night, making sure, double checking, because that guy went for 30 some odd years killing people. No one found out who he was. It was crazy.
Yeah.
That's way scarier than, like Gambino said, vampires and werewolves and all that kind of stuff.
Those are just fun. Like,
Yeah. If you look at like a series like Mindhunter on Netflix, I mean, they already have 2 seasons, but just seeing the portrayal of the mindset of these serial killers, I mean, that's scary in itself, and that's more with crime. But seeing how it's a human doing this and coming up with these things that they're doing, so yeah, that's.
And Megan, you started diving to the crime stuff too now, right in the crime. What you're in? Jack.
Yeah. Well, I started with crime, and Songbirds is crime adjacent. There's crime in it. I think my crime is always more character based than plot based. So but like Gabino was saying, like it's always based in sort of this terrible situation, and that's really a character story, right? That's lit fic. When you're attached to a character enough to care about what's happening to them, that's usually lit fic, and that's my sweet spot. But I don't want to write a boring story, right? You want it to be interesting, and so you want to keep the readers flipping pages, and crime is a great way to do that, to add that tension or that thrillingness, as Gabino pointed out.
The
thrillerness. So yeah, I had a story in a Jacked anthology, just came out, and that was really fun. And the Shotgun Honey collection that's coming next year is a crime collection, sort of technically, in that there's a crime in every story, but it's lit fic, in that it's it matters because you care about the characters. And the eyeball one is in there, Brad.
I'm not going to read that one again. I'm just going to tell you right now. Like eyeball stuff, I can't deal with. Like, and Will Redbeard, another reviewer, he gets like eyeball injections. Is that just like the worst thing? Because he has to watch the needle come. Like, no, I can't. You just got to put me out. It's horrible.
I'll read it to you. I'm going to make a video of me reading it to you. Brad.
Like, that's true. True horror for me. Messing with someone's eyeballs. That's the most terrifying thing to me.
I slashed my cornea. One of these days, I'll write it down and send it your way.
Do y'all have any like real life phobias? Like, I don't like the stuff with eyeballs. Do you have anything yourselves that bother you that you've put into a story or thought about putting into a story, like claustrophobic or anything like that?
Oh, I'm writing. A lot of people are surprised about nonfiction horror being a thing. And about a year and a half ago, I wrote an essay for Tor Nightfire because I back home I used to date a woman who saw ghosts. She saw dead people, and I didn't know how weird that was until like years later. But in November of last year, I got an alien egg in the back of my head. I had a cyst that kept.
I remember you posted about that,
and it didn't bother me. The idea of it, I couldn't see it. All right. And that was the thing, because if I'm home, I could like grab my phone and like go to the bathroom mirror and get but throughout the day, you're not standing in front of a mirror. So I would feel the pain. And the first time that they sliced it open, I had to keep it open with Vaseline for 5 days so it would drain. So I would feel stuff coming out, but I couldn't see it. And that really messed me up. I didn't know that when they sliced my neck, I couldn't fathom the psychological angle of what it was going to take. And at night, I could feel I had to put a warm, really hot water compress on it so the bad stuff would come to the surface and I could feel it leaving my body. And I couldn't see it. And that became, I don't know if I'm going to call it a phobia, but it became a thing. I just, don't.
See, if I had that, I'd be like, okay, if I was out and about, like at the grocery store or something like that, I'm like, people are looking at it. They're looking at my boat.
Looking at it.
They're looking, and it's probably draining right now. It's probably draining. I'm leaving a trail down the aisle.
Is it messing my shirt? I don't.
Yeah. There's
Then
probably
you've
big
got all the
smile on
eyes
my
in the back of
shirt.
your head. You feel everyone watching.
You know, it's probably back there singing, feed me or something, and people are just looking at it. And
You're growing a tooth. That's the. I don't know.
Right.
So, Megan, do you have anything to top that?
Megan's thinking about the tooth. Look at her.
Well, it's funny because when Gabino had that cyst, I think I asked you if it was a thyroglossal one because I had one right here, and so I had to get my neck cut open, and I have a scar, and it's like right across my neck. They put me out for it, thankfully, and they did not leave it open, and so, but no, I mean I'm claustrophobic, but I've never written about it. But I've written about lots of other things, related to fears about my children and stuff that works its way into my books and my stories. But I haven't really dived into the real phobias, I suppose.
Really torturing yourself while you write something.
Yeah. Interesting.
With your fear of stuff with your kids, is that sort of how do you pronounce it? Nephilim? Is that how that?
Nephilim?
Nephilim?
I think, yeah. I mean that's that's more about parenting. Where I really felt. I think I've told you before that I came to writing out of postpartum depression as a way to just not kill myself, and so that's really how I was feeling like my children were eating me. And that's where that story came from. And in so many ways, being speculative or like Gabino was saying, the magical realism allows you to sort of get to something bigger and deeper than real life can by kind of, I don't know, creating a metaphor perhaps that people understand a little bit more. So, those are biblical giants that ate their parents, the Nephilim. In the Old Testament. And so, there's a historical basis, obviously, for this problem.
Pulling the religion in right there.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because I'm super happy that you're fine now, and I'm glad that your journey brought you here. But now that you're okay, do you realize that coming out of postpartum depression into writing is like doing heroin because you want to be healthy? That's not... It's a mess to do. Right.
It is. Well, it is. But, when so much of my struggle was being an educated, used to being out in the world and having community and feeling important and not feeling important at home covered in peanut butter. And so there's something about like being able to work from home that writing, lets you do. That wasn't quite as common in the pre-COVID days. But and I will say that it's not just writing. I mean, I fully believe in therapists and pharmaceuticals, so it wasn't just that one thing. But it's out of the frying pan and into the fire, right?
Right.
Do you teach like writing related stuff at all?
I do. I teach creative writing at a technical community college. And then, like all of the rest of us, to pay the bills because writing doesn't, I teach workshops and stuff.
So were you doing the technical college job before you yourself started writing?
I didn't. No, I taught middle school before I had children, and then children had me at home, and then I went back to school and got an MA in creative writing, and so I also have an MEd in teaching. So that got me there.
So out of all the things you could have done, why writing? Was it just because it was something you could do at home at the time?
Well, I've always been like a reader, so I loved reading, and mommy blogging was kind of the thing in like 2013, and so it was a way for women at home to create community. And so I started that way, and then it started to feel kind of exposing, and my family wasn't in love with all of what I was revealing. So I kind of started sticking my finger in fiction, and it stuck.
what was mommy blogging, like how to get stains out of stuff, or like I'm.
Well,
what
no,
were you revealing?
it's more like complaining about, things your children are doing, or your husband not being supportive, or, the fact that like, nobody ever asks moms about themselves anymore. It's always, how's the baby? How's the baby? So you kind of just become a function instead of a person.
So it's noir. It's existential noir.
Yeah.
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 It's a place for all the moms to vent.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, you start getting a little maybe too vented, and your family gets a little uncomfortable. And so you start,
Then it becomes a little cliquish, like, she's a mom, she shouldn't be wearing that. And then
you start writing
did you
stories
see
about
her
murdering
hair?
people.
Yeah.
It's a short trip.
Yeah. So as we start to wind down a little bit this evening, you both have, well, Meagan, yours is like a year away.
Yeah, it's forever. Yeah.
Gabino, yours is in
Tomorrow.
yeah, pretty close.
16 and a half days or something.
I'll say this. A lot of people talk about new books, but Songbirds has been out for a while, but it is completely new for folks who haven't read it yet. So
There you go.
If you're looking for an excuse to go buy it, so that you understand the tie-in story in next year's collection,
Yes,
by all means, go do that. Yeah.
Same as if, you're waiting like me because you're not special enough to get an arc of The Devil Takes You Home.
I can send you one. I think I have one. Yeah.
You could read one of these.
You can read one.
Look
in
at
the 18 days.
Did
could
you
probably
two
read
play in
you could
this?
read both of them in the next 18 days.
No,
They
also
wrote the script before we went live.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're keeping a running list of our shirts, but Meagan said, "I believe in chemicals," and I love that line. Let's put that one on a shirt too.
Pharmaceuticals rule.
Pharmaceuticals for the win. Send me your address, Meagan. I think I have one somewhere in here.
Just right now, live over the show. Just blurt your address
Yeah,
out.
go ahead. Right. We already told us you're in North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, you're narrowing it down already.
You're the Canadian with the puppy, North Carolina. It's easy to find.
So, Gabino, I wanted to ask you something. Since you do book reviews for NPR and you're an author, do you ever feel like it's weird to sort of talk about your colleagues like in a negative way, possibly, if you don't like a book and do things like that? Because a lot of authors, they do reviews. It's usually 5 stars. Like maybe they won't talk about a book that they didn't like, but you're sort of in the same space with them. Do you ever feel weird about maybe doing a negative review when you're an author yourself?
On a negative comment.
Well, I wanted to ask him because we're reviewers, but he's also an author, and I'm sure for NPR it's not always. I don't know. I might be wrong, but it's not always amazing sunshines and rainbows. Maybe you have some criticisms about stuff.
Listen, Brad, I'm in it for the money and the fame. I ain't in it to make friends. I don't.
So that means you can
it's
trust
a cutthroat business. If they can't handle it, they need.
You can trust Gabino's reviews because he doesn't care about your feelings.
Yeah. I don't care about your feelings. You shouldn't have written
That's
anything
a t-shirt.
out in the world. No, it was. I came to reviewing in a very roundabout way when I had a TA-ship at the University of Texas at Austin that paid $930 a month. They encouraged us not to get other jobs, but how are you not going to get another job? So I ended up working almost full-time as a journalist while going to school. And I covered the culture beat. And I said, if I'm reading all these books, I might as well start writing about them. And that's how I came about it. And at some point in my life, early on, I couldn't get anybody to publish my stuff for free, let alone pay me. So I was getting paid for reviews before I was getting paid for fiction. And I absolutely love it. I think it's a superpower. Meagan was just complaining that she didn't get a galley. She could have asked. So that's I write an email and I say, hey, it's Gabino with NPR, San Francisco Chronicle, Boston Globe. I'm reviewing this for this venue. And the next day or 2 days after, I have any book that's coming out at my.
I need that superpower. That's what I need.
It is a superpower. there's certain things that I do to ensure that it doesn't become a hassle. Number one, I try to pitch only books that I think I'm going to like.
Yeah.
And number two, if it's an indie book and I'm reviewing it for free for places like Volume 1 Brooklyn or Horror DNA, indie writers need absolutely no help not selling books. So if I hate it, I want to put it away and not talk about it because I don't need to destroy you unless you did something absolutely disgusting, and then it's like a personal thing. And the review shouldn't be personal, so I'll just take to my social media and tell the world that you're a despicable human being. So I never worry about it. And as a writer, I try not to mix those two. But as a writer, we were mentioning before the 1-star review. You want to read my book and review it and say something about it? I'm pretty sure I can find one pull quote that will sound nice. We need all talking about no bad publicity. So I've never thought about it that way. Like you can send me a book, I'll review it in a very mature way. I will review the book that you send me, not the book that I wish you'd written. And that should be more than enough for us to be adults and keep our friendship. If it's not, that shit's on you. If you're gonna get angry about me saying something about your book, maybe you need thicker skin. And like I said, money, women, and power. That's why I'm here. So it's not the friends.
That's definitely a T-shirt. Money, women, and power with your face on there. Thumbs up.
Not here for the friends. That's a nice T-shirt.
Megan, did you have anything else you wanted to ask Gabino? I know you were coming up with your 20 questions earlier.
No, I think I got them covered.
Okay, good.
Really, I just wanted an arc, so that's fixed.
That's the only reason she showed up.
Yeah.
I know. The only reason she came tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, you're big time now. You're representing the whole state of North Carolina. Just tell people, give me your book, and they'll send it to you.
Right. Yeah.
There you
Let
go.
that box text you sent Gabino about doing the Wrecking article.
Right.
You just landed with Shotgun Honey, so I mean, you should be getting. They should send them all to you for reviews, right?
Yeah.
Well, right, but I don't write reviews. I'm terrible at writing reviews. I'm not good at like Gabino. I lie. All of my Goodreads ratings are lies. I'm just being nice. I'm Canadian. That's what we do.
But then now you get
playing to the stereotypes.
Canadians always apologize.
Yeah.
I can't. I can't with a debut novelist or an indie writer. Like, I'm here to support you.
Do you get asked to do blurbs at all, Megan?
I've done 10 blurbs this year so far.
Nice.
Awesome.
So a lot of blurbing. But I won't blurb a book that I don't like.
Right.
That's totally different. It's one thing to give someone 4 stars on Goodreads. It's another thing to have your name on the cover.
Name on the cover. Do you feel the same way, Gabino? Because I know you blurb a lot of stuff. I know you wrote Red Legault's collection, which was pretty cool for her.
I don't know if they're cool for them. I always feel so weird. Like, why would you think people give a rat's ass about my opinion of your book? So once I get over that hump, I try to blurb as many things as I can. Obviously, I have to like it, and I have to have time. For the first time in my life, I had to ask folks for a little bit of time because my agent got on my case about, we have a deadline for the next one, and you're reading like 19 books for blurb. Stop. And then the next day, we got a request through her from Soho Crime for Nicolas Ferraro, and I sat down with her and I was like, all right, if it's a writer of color, a member of the LGBTQ community, or a woman, then I'll blurb it. And then she was like, that's a lot of people anyway, but okay. Do whatever you want. And then it's really weird because I didn't expect to blurb certain people. So it's out now, but I got a very professional email asking me to blurb Daphne, the upcoming novel by Josh Mallerman. And I was like, who am I to blurb a New York Times bestseller? So every time I do one of those, I feel like I need to go back to the indie community and offer again, because it feels nice to have your name on a hardcover. But Josh doesn't need my help selling books. Like, they're going to sell anyway. And then every time that I get a blurb, which happened for The Devil Takes You Home, that same day I would go on social media and offer, because it feels so awesome when someone that you ask for a blurb, they say something else about your book. And I'm huge on paying it forward. So every time that I get a blurb, I have to turn around and hand out a dozen.
Here's what we're going to do then. We're going to wrap up the show, end it here, but you need to work on the blurb for this episode, because we're gonna put it on Twitter and Instagram, and it's gonna be on Brad's channel. It's gonna be on my channel tomorrow. It's gonna be a podcast. So think of the blurb. So when we start posting
It's just
everywhere,
T-shirts is the blurb.
yeah.
Right.
Gabino says T-shirt. Watch this episode. So start working on that. So,
I
we're gonna
more eloquent stuff, like, I'm sorry it was me, but I had fun. Or something like that.
And on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks so much to our special guests this evening, Gabino Iglesias and Meagan Lucas. Both things coming out in the near future. We have to wait a little bit for Meagan's, but what are you going to do? That's the way the cookie crumbles. I had to squeeze that in there again.
That's the new tagline for the show.
I know it is. That's the new tagline. It's from a previous episode. That's going to do it, guys. Thank you both so much for being here. Totally appreciate it. For Brad, I'm Jay. This episode of Paper Cuts is over with. It's a wrap.
Gabino, Meagan, thanks for coming on, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, y'all.
Love you, Jay.
It was great.